The Life of St Columba. Come on a journey with us as we explore the life of St Columba. Learn about his birth in 521 AD, his years of study, founding his first monastery in Derry, the Great Battle of Culdrevna, the exile to Iona, and his death in 597 AD. Birth 521 AD. St Columba was born in Garton, Donegal in 521 AD. He was born of noble blood, as his father and mother were both born of families with power and influence. His mother was a princess of Leinster, and his father was of the clan of Garton, a reigning family of Ireland. Kill was actually baptised Crism, translated as fox, possibly due to the colour of his hair, but was later given the name Columkill, Dove of the Church, due to his devotion to prayer and attending the church from a young age. Over time, he has often been referred to as Columba, which also means Dove of the Church in Latin. Studies 526 to 540 AD. It was customary in Ireland during the 6th century that noble families would place their first son into education in the church. Here he would be trained and educated in scripture and other important writings. Therefore, Columba entered training in several influential monasteries, living in monastic communities under the training of historically notable saints. His first place of learning was the monastic school of Monastery, where he arrived once he had advanced in his letters. There he studied under the Bishop St Finian, who had travelled on the continent and in Italy. After becoming a deacon, Columba moved on from Monastery and went to learn from an old poet named Gemmin in Leinster. Columba journeyed to Glasnevin to finish his studies at St Mulvey's School. However, his education abruptly ended due to an outbreak of the Yellow Plague. Columba fled north to escape from the disease, and in crossing the Bure River, Columba prayed that the water would mark the northernmost limit of the outbreak, preventing further deaths and the risk to his homeland. First Monastery, 545 AD. St Columba is the patron saint of Derry. He is believed to have founded a monastery in Derry in 545 AD. The story, according to the 12th and 16th centuries Lives of Columkill, claims the king, Iad MacInver, granted Columkill land at Derry, where he could found a monastery. Columba had great respect for the oaks that covered his new settlement and chose to build his monastery in a natural clearing at the top of the island to avoid cutting any down. Many people believe the site of St Augustine's is the location of the first church built by St Columba. Evidence for this resides in the current church, which faces north-south rather than the usual east-west, which is customary in Christian churches. The Battle of Culdrevna, 560 AD. Whilst remembered as a holy and God-fearing man, St Columba was involved in some serious conflicts. The most notable and serious of these was caused by a copyright scandal. During his time with St Finian at Monastery, he secretly copied the saint's valuable Book of Psalms. This long and arduous process of writing out the Psalter in the monastery was discovered by Finian, who demanded that Columba gave him the copy. The Psalter was his, so should the copy be. Columba stubbornly withheld it. The disagreement resulted in the involvement of the King of Ireland, Diarmaid MacCarroll. St Finian appealed to the king to make a judgment on who the copy should belong to. The king judged in favour of Finian, decreeing what is said to be the first ever law of copyright: to every cow her calf, and every book its copy. Columba was angry when the king's ruling went against him. He did not think the king had ruled fairly. Angered by the king's ruling, Columba gained the support of his own people in Tyrconnell, who came to fight against the king's forces in the Battle of Culdrevnia. The king was mightily defeated by Columba, yet the consequences of the battle were severe and long-lasting. Not only did many fighters die, Columba would also have to face personal consequences that would shape the rest of his life. It is claimed that almost 3,000 men died during the battle. After the king's defeat, he called the Synod of Teltown, attempting to excommunicate Columba. The consequence for killing an opponent's men in battle was that each person killed equaled the payment of 10 cows, the currency of the time. Estimates of the death count at the battle ranged from 400 to 3,000, placing Columba in deep debt with the king. However, Columba never made the payment for those killed in the 4-day battle. Some of those who attended the synod blamed Columba solely for the deaths and called for his execution. Others favoured excommunication. Brendan of Birr, a noted theologian at the time, spoke on Columba's behalf, and the deal was made that allowed for the option of exile instead. Ultimately, instead of complete excommunication, Columba was exiled from Ireland. Exile and journey to Iona, 563 AD. Columba felt guilt and sorrow for his role in the Battle of Culdrevnia, and he vowed to save as many souls for Christ as had died on the battlefield. Columba left Ireland, pledging to never set foot in his homeland again, and taking with him 12 disciples, he set sail in a curragh. On leaving his beloved home in 563 AD, Columba headed to Dalriada, the Irish kingdom in Scotland. According to legend, St Columba first landed on the Isle of Kintyre. However, with the coast of Ireland still visible, he travelled further north and set down on the island of Iona. Arriving on the island, Columba ensured no view of Ireland could be gained, and then began to build his new settlement on Iona. St Columba now focused on building a monastery and saving as many souls for Christ as had died on the battlefield. Columba and his 12 fellow monks established a monastery on the island and began to live self-sufficient lifestyles through farming. Alongside praying alone and as a community several times a day, the monks were busy maintaining the land and copying manuscripts in the scriptorium, writing with quill and vellum. It is believed that the famous Book of Kells, now located in Dublin's Trinity College, was started by monks on Iona and then finished in Kells at a later date. Almost 100 miracles have been attributed to St Columba, from turning water into wine, raising the dead, calming storms, and walking on water. St Columba's encounter with the Loch Ness Monster is one of the most known. Columba and a band of his men had travelled to Loch Ness to convert the Picts to Christianity. When they reached a village on the edge of the loch, the people told them of a villager who had just been killed by a water monster. Columba requested one of his men to swim into the loch. As the man swam toward the centre of the loch, the bystanders on the shore were terrified when they heard a roar as the sea monster appeared on the surface beside the swimming man. Columba was not afraid. He called to the sea monster and, making the sign of the cross, commanded the sea monster to return to the depths of the loch and never again harm a human. The sea monster bowed its head and disappeared under the water as quick as it had appeared, and was never seen again. Final years and death, 9th of June, 597 AD. In his later life, Columba was said to have become more deeply connected to God and the spiritual realm than ever before. Reaching the end, he saw visions of angels beckoning him to heaven. It is said that as Columba was approaching death, his white horse, who had carried him faithfully for many years, came to lay his head on Columba's lap, shedding tears for his kind master. The saint breathed his last lying at the altar in his monastery on Iona, surrendering his soul to heaven as he blessed the monks who surrounded him. Columba's life ended on the 9th of June, 597 AD, but his mission continued and his legacy lives on.